Sorry. I forgot where I was. I'll take this whiskey is hitting hard.
This is how we do it. Welcome to another week of Case Files with Kat
and Ashley.
Yes, we are here.
We are here, but are we?
But are we? But are we
Guys,
here?
Let me just tell you, they've been giving me whiskey. It's not going well for me. I'm wrapped up in my little birthday blanket. She got me this really cool blanket.
What's it say?
Hold on, I gotta unfold it.
What's it say?
It says, friends forever. Even after we're gone, we'll be ghost friends, scaring people side by side. And it's so soft. So I'm just wrapped up in my little blanket because it's like 40 degrees here, drinking my whiskey drink.
She's got her whiskey drink. She's got her vodka drink. No. Yeah, that's so funny.
So anyways, just don't mind me, guys.
Luckily, it's not your story to tell.
Yes.
I might need another beer, though.
Maybe.
Maybe I need to catch up. Damn. All right. Okay. So last week, we talked about the beginnings of the man known as the Butcher of Plainfield, Ed Gein. And we learned that he had just lost his mother, Augusta Gein. And she played a the most pivotal role in his life. About a year after she died, he basically thought that it was time to bring her back to life. And he was going to do that by visiting local graveyards at night. And that's where we stopped the last episode, okay? So if you haven't listened to the first part, you're really missing a lot. We get into some really existential questions. I mean, we really do. We dive deep, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, here we go. Okay. So at this point, he goes to the local graveyard. This is a year after she's passed, right? And he decides that he is going to dig her up, and he removes her head, and he takes it back to the farm. And he says it's because he was going to shrink it, like he read in those magazines.
Right.
But what he was able to do was, using one of his many taxidermy books, he was able to preserve her head.
Oh.
Okay. So he was able to preserve it. He had it just like on a shelf or something, dresser. Not really sure where he had it. And this is so psycho, right? Now we're kind of getting into the like a stuffed body or preserving the taxidermy aspect, right? You can really see where Norman Bates starts to become a character.
Yeah.
Like using I'm not going to say the bare bones of the story, but I just did. Just using the framework of who Ed Gein starts to become, and where Norman Bates gets brought up. We are going to talk about Buffalo Bill. Buffalo Bill comes in like this is I think the biggest part of who Buffalo Bill. This is the biggest part of him. But anyway, he was visiting the graveyard so often, and at first, he was visiting his mother every single day. I mean, after she died, he visited her every day without fail. Like, he was obsessed. He was still obsessed with her, even in death.
Right.
And then he started to go and visit other women who were near his mother's age that also had died.
Oh.
And he went only to see them. This was his saying, to see them, to sit near the graves of these recently deceased women who reminded him of Augusta. And I think he was just inching closer, getting closer and getting closer. But soon his curiosity turned into action. Gein had confessed to police that between 1947 and 1952, he made as many as 40 trips to local cemeteries. Now, there is speculation that it was way more than that. He said he was helped by somebody. There was never any proof that there was somebody else that helped him. Some say that might have been the disassociation, that it could have been another personality of his.
Yeah.
That there was another man, Brady or somebody, that helped him.
Right.
But there was no evidence of this person ever.
Okay.
And so there could be many, 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 many more times. There are still bones, pieces. There's way more than 40 trips.
Yeah.
Right. And so that it's just nothing that you can prove. And I'm sure if they could DNA everybody now, it might be too late to do that, but to identify all of the remains. They've never been able to do that. So he made as many as 40 trips to local cemeteries. Sometimes he dug up bodies. Sometimes he said he came to his senses and in the middle of that action and filled the holes back up. Like he never finished the excavation process. But when he did go through with it, that's the thing. That's the part. When he did go through with it, he exhumed the corpses of middle-aged women, took what he wanted from them, and left the rest behind. And the face that you're giving me right now is
just imagining this, because back then I imagine their burying techniques were not as advanced as they are now. And just how bad it was when he originally dug them up to then take them home and do other stuff with them. Like, I can't imagine the smell.
So what he was able to do, though, was to really professionally, pretty well skin the body parts that he did take and treat them, tan them, clean them to a point that he could wear them.
Oh, okay. Normal.
Normal. He could treat them to the point that they were wearable. Like it was like cured hide. I don't know what you call that, but like, I mean, bear skin rugs and stuff. I mean, like it was, you could have it out.
Yeah.
Right. He made projects with them, and I'll get into that in a second. But when he did go through with it, it was women who reminded him of his mother, and in the hopes that he could create her and bring her back to life and create something for himself to wear that he could embody his mother.
Okay.
That was his goal. Was there sexual gratification from any of that? Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there was. I mean, I'm sure there was necrophilia. I'm sure there was that sort of stuff. But, and who knows what happened on his alone time when he was wearing these things. We don't know that. But there's some satisfaction. I think that sexual satisfaction that came from all of that. But, so we've talked about the grave digging, but there are victims, to the story. There are victims who lost their life because of Ed Gein. We did talk about Henry, but that is just a theory that makes a whole lot of fucking sense, but it's just a theory. But in 1954, like I said, Plainfield, Wisconsin, gossip runs super quickly through a little town like that, right? Yeah. In 1954, a 51-year-old tavern owner, Mary Hogan, disappeared from her bar. All that was left was a very big pool of blood and an empty bullet casing. Oh. Now, Ed's dad was a huge drinker, right? Like that was kind of like the sin of sins for him. So between his dad and his mother's super religiosity and all of her teachings, he didn't really he wasn't a big drinker. That wasn't his thing. So going to a place like Mary's Tavern, wasn't odd for him to do, but because he wasn't antisocial, he was just awkward social. And so he did go, but it wasn't the drinking that he was very fascinated by Mary herself. She had the stature of his mother. She was about the same age, right? She held a very big role in the tavern, and so there's just a lot about her that remember Augusta ran that store. Yeah. So here's another business owner, here's another woman doing the thing, and so she just reminded him of his mother, and so he was very obsessed with her and visited her a lot. But then one day she disappears, and they find this bloody scene.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
What was that?
My support kitty ran into the box by your Christmas tree, and the box fell over on top of him, and he ran off.
Did he just jump like all crazy?
Yeah, he just
all right.
ran. They're playing. My 2 support kitties are playing.
Okay, because they don't like the story. So on that night, Mary disappears, and all they have is this weird ass crime scene. Now, someone did say that they saw Ed's truck around the bar that night, and they did say that they're like they did that was definitely his truck. Like there was only that's the truck. Very small town, right? But for 3 years, the case went nowhere. Until Gein was arrested in 1957, when investigators found Mary's head in a paper bag at his farmhouse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Ed, to his credit, told everybody where she was. He joked about her disappearance in town, saying, "Oh, she's at the farm right now." But everyone thought he was kidding.
Right.
She's not missing. She's at my farm right now.
And he was serious.
He would say that, and they were like, ha ha ha, Ed wouldn't hurt a fly.
Yeah.
Like right under their noses. And I think that bothered them so much. Like later on, they're just like,
yeah.
ugh. And I think it goes back to that. It's under our nose. It is that guy next door. It is the one you don't think could hurt a fly.
He literally admitted it.
He was telling everybody, she's not missing. She's at my farm right now. And it's just like, well, that's weird. That's a weird off-color joke, dude. Oh, don't do that. So the projects. I mentioned that a little bit ago. What did he do with the remains would later horrify the world. This becomes the Buffalo Bill. This becomes the Buffalo Bill story. Inside the farmhouse, Ed began crafting what he called his projects. Now, there are tons of police photographs, evidence logs, described so many horrible things. Now, saying these things makes me very, very uncomfortable. And so I laugh when I get uncomfortable. And so my laughing when I say these things is not because I'm making light of it. It is out of discomfort. Because this shit makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Okay. So see, I'm laughing. So there's plenty of police photographs. If you've ever seen anything about Ed Gein, you've probably seen some of these photographs because it is hard to forget. But the police logs, the evidence logs, as they were walking through the house, they were describing masks made from human faces. So that were actually, masks that were taken off the bone, faces that were taken off the skull, and tanned and cured and all the things that it needed to be done. I'm not sure what all the verbiage is for him to wear them. So he would have the different masks. And this is sort of like the inspiration for Leather. What's his name? From Texas Chainsaw. Leatherface. This is where that character comes from, is having these masks, these sort of different personalities. There were chairs that were upholstered by human skin.
Excuse me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There were bowls that he used that were carved from skulls. There was a lampshade, according to early reports, that appeared to be stitched also from human flesh. There was there was a shoebox. They opened up a shoebox, and they found 9 vulvas in the shoebox. I can't imagine what that moment must have been like for those police officers. Like, you're just like looking. I mean, just. It gets worse like every step you go in, every step you walk into this house. When they walked into this house, and I said it was like musty and stinky and all of those kinds of things, there was a level of grime that was like almost like slippery. What was happening inside of that house, all that cooking and all of that, just the fattiness of tissue and meat and all that. I mean, there was a human heart in a pot on the stove at that moment that the cops went into that house, right? There were entrails in a bucket. There's just grime everywhere. And and it's just that, bleh, bleh.
I cannot imagine the actual smell of the place.
I can't either, because I know what like rot smells like. And it's just like, I can't imagine what that smells like. It must have just been 100 times worse. So there were the vulvas. I'm not really sure what was happening with those. There was a belt made of nipples, women's nipples, and a pair of lips that were tacked to a window shade pole. So that's what he pulled the window shade down with, was that. On his bed, he had each of the 4 posts on his bed were human skulls, sort of like as decoration. So like on each of the 4.
Oh my God.
There was just a lot. There was a lot. He even made what he called a woman's suit, a full body garment that he had sewn together from the skins of these exhumed corpses, complete with breasts, that he would wear.
Oh.
That he would wear. So during questioning, he would tell investigators that he sometimes put it on and pretend to be his mother. He'd walk around the house imagining he'd brought her back to life.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he was mean like her. Like, I wonder if he lived that part out. Or I wonder if he was like, in the show, they have him dancing and being silly. I don't think she fucking ever danced. I don't know. Maybe she did. But I wonder what personality came out.
Yeah, because, on the show, they made it seem like he was just having the time of his life when he was wearing her suit.
Yeah, but I mean, I think Norman Bates kept his mother's domineering personality when he dressed up as her.
Yeah.
So when you say all of this out loud, it sounds like it's really something out of a movie, right? All of it just sounds so unreal.
Yeah.
And so you can see that one day it does become a movie, but it wasn't fiction. Several movies. I've said Psycho, Texas Chainsaw, and Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. This was a lonely man in a crumbling farmhouse sewing together pieces of his delusion that he could bring his mother back to life, that he was somehow like becoming one with his mom in doing this. So now let's go back. So we're back now to November 16th, 1957. This is the morning that Bernice Worden vanished. So she owned the local hardware store, and her son was Deputy Sheriff Frank Worden. And he noticed the store was closed when he returned from hunting that afternoon. He wasn't expecting that to be closed. So he goes in and he notices that the cash register is open and there are bloodstains on the floor leading out the back door. And the last sale receipt in the register was for a gallon of antifreeze sold to Ed Gein that very morning. So Fred knew Ed very well. Everyone did. Right. And he was like, yeah, he seemed odd, but he seemed harmless. So still the receipt was the receipt. It was the last receipt. So they picked him up that evening at a grocery store in town. And when they brought him in, he didn't fight. He didn't ask why. He just said, she's at the house.
Oh my God.
She's at the house. Just like the other ones, right? Like, I'm telling you, there's no irony in my statement. I was like, there's no joke in the statement. She's at my house.
Yeah.
So when investigators entered the farmhouse, and I feel so bad for her son at this moment in time. I feel so bad for her son because at every step, every second you're going into this house, it gets worse and worse. And the fear that this man must have had the fear this man must have had just was probably over the top. And he kept doing his job. Damn. According to official crime scene reports, the house was littered with body parts. Now, he said he made 40 up to 40 trips to the graveyard. They found 14 human noses, 10 skulls that were used as bowls, a wastebasket made of skin, a corset made from a female torso flayed shoulders to waist, and hanging from the rafters of a shed was Bernice Warden that was dressed out like a deer. Headless, upside down, cut all the way. Her head was found in a burlap sack. Her heart was near the stove. In a plastic bag. Not in a pot, sorry. It was in a plastic bag. When questioned, Ed admitted to shooting her with a .22 rifle. He said it was an accident, that he'd been aiming for a window and the gun just went off. But nobody believed that. Avi, look around you.
Yeah.
The town was never the same. Never the same. This became international news. This was, the reporters were flooding in, calling it the House of Horrors. Locals who had grown up with Ed refused to believe it at first. I mean, he's the guy that wouldn't hurt a fly. He was so mild and weird and, awkward dude, but he wouldn't hurt anybody. He wasn't the shadowy stranger. He'd babysat their kids, never had a problem. How do you feel as a parent knowing that your kids were babysat by Ed Gein? Where are those children? Those children need to come forward and say something. Like, I would love to hear their stories. I would love to hear, like, we were actually scared of him, but our parents thought we were being crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I would love to know, like, did the kids have a sense?
Yeah. Did he babysit them at his house? Because that is weird.
That would, no, I'm sure that never was allowed.
Like in the show, I don't want to.
Oh, they brought him. He brought him. He
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to have, but yeah, honestly, there was never any. There were no other people. Now there was a babysitter who did disappear, that the show did mention, but I think that whole story was a bit fabricated. It was never tied to Ed, and it kind of really made it clear that it was Ed, but it was never tied to Ed. She disappeared from the house that she was babysitting, and they found, her dad went to go look for her and found just her shoe. But they never were able to find her. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, he watched their children fix their fences. He laughed with them at dinner. The town shut down for days. Children were kept home from school. The hardware store became a crime scene, and the Gein's farmhouse was finally sealed off. But the Gawkers came. The Gawkers. Hundreds of people started driving in from other states just to see where the butcher of Plainfield had lived. When his belongings were slated for auction, the crowds were so large that authorities had to call it off. And days later, in March 1958, the farmhouse mysteriously burned to the ground. Some called it justice, others called it mercy. Now, there was a crowd of about 2,000 people who went to watch the auction on March 30th, 1958.
Just the fact that people wanted to own these things made out of human
victims. They were going to sell the whole thing.
It's just so
the highest
fucking gross to me.
Gross.
It's one thing to have a letter. I still don't get it, but I kind of get it. To have a letter. To have actual human flesh made things is just so disturbing to me. Like, I feel like all of those people should have been investigated.
You guys all need to have your heads checked.
The fuck? Who wants an actual lampshade made out of real human flesh? Just chilling, or a nipple chair, or whatever. Fucking disturbing.
Ugh.
Like, I try not to judge people, but what the fuck? Actually, what the fuck?
Zach Bagans, he collected all that shit.
Yeah, I don't
He has
like
the
him, so-
cauldron. He has like the cauldron or something.
Oh my God, it's so disturbing.
So the highest bidder for the land and charred ruins of the House of Horrors was Endon Shea, a Wisconsin real estate broker who said he planned to put the entire 195 acres into pine for timber and pulpwood production. So
This is stressing me out.
he took, the whole thing burned down. So like, okay, let's plant some trees. Great. Great. The headstone that was in the cemetery for Ed Gein, who used to visit the cemetery all the time, but the headstone was eventually stolen and never recovered. It'd been vandalized over and over and over and over and over again. People going to gawk at that just to take a picture, take a piece, vandalize it, whatever. And when it was finally stolen and not recovered, they left it like that. So it is an unmarked grave now, just so that people do not want to deal with that shit. They don't like to talk about like they are the home of the butcher of Plainfield. It's like there's so much before and so much after, and that like this is all they're known for.
Yeah.
And so they don't like it. Sorry, here we go. So when the fire burned Ed Gein's farmhouse to the ground, it was as though Plainfield itself had decided to erase him. Investigators had spent weeks cataloging every item recovered from the ruins and from what they had already seized before the fire. Over 40 pieces of evidence made from human remains. According to the state crime lab, the parts came from at least 15 different women, though only 2 murders were ever proven. In custody, Ed was calm, cooperative even. Officers said he answered questions like a man giving directions to the grocery store. When asked where he got the body parts from, he said, from the graveyard. When asked why, he said, I wanted to make a woman's suit. I wanted to be my mother again.
He's just so matter of fact about everything. Like, just so, like, he doesn't, in his mind, it's not weird. It's
not weird.
Normal
and
for him.
That's the thing. He doesn't see what his mom did. He doesn't
Yeah.
see what he's doing. None of it's wrong. The interrogation lasted more than 30 hours. Damn. Sheriff Art Schley, the same man who'd first entered the farmhouse, reportedly lost his temper and slammed Gein's head against the wall. That confession, while technically coerced, still lined up with what they found at the scene. Gein described digging up bodies, tanning their hides, and fashioning objects out of them. He spoke of donning the woman's suit during full moons, walking around the house, and managing he was Augusta, resurrected. Psychiatrists later diagnosed him with schizophrenia and a severe Oedipal fixation. Do you know what Oedipal fixation is?
No, I don't. I don't know that I want to know.
No, well, maybe you don't.
Yeah.
So it comes from the old Greek play, Oedipus, Oedipus Rex. Is that the name? But anyway, so if you have an Oedipus complex, then the son was in love with his mother, and so like wouldn't want another man to be with her.
Right.
Right. Right. So it's like this whole mother having sex with her son thing. And it's like a whole thing.
Oh.
This is a very old play, right? So it's an Oedipal fixation. So you love your mother so much, you will not share her.
Gross.
Anyway, he wasn't sexually motivated in the way we may think of most killers. Like his crimes weren't driven by lust or by power. They were driven by delusion and immense grief. An effort to reverse death itself. When the district attorney asked him why he murdered Bernice Worden, Gein hesitated and said, I don't remember. But he remembered enough to lead police to the burial sites where he unearthed bodies. And what they found matched his stories in really haunting detail. Coffins that were disturbed, there were missing body pieces and scraps of clothing that tied back to the trophies in his house. And they were trophies. I mean, he collected them, but then they served a purpose for him as well. By early 1958, the story had gone national. Newspapers called him the Ghoul of Plainfield.
Oh.
Headlines screamed House of Horrors and the real-life Dr. Frankenstein. Reporters compared him to monsters from the pulp novels that he was reading. Life magazine ran photos of the farmhouse in ruins. Psychologists were interviewed on television trying to explain how a quiet man from Wisconsin could become America's new face of evil and truly the inspiration for a new horror genre.
Yeah.
But the people of Plainfield just wanted it to stop. They just really wanted to stop.
Yeah, I can
they
imagine.
were tired of the strangers showing up, asking for souvenirs. Gross.
Oh my
Tired of their small town being associated with something so grotesque. And even today, locals rarely speak his name. Now, the trial began on November 21st, 1957. So really soon after his arrest, Ed Gein was formally charged with first-degree murder for the death of Bernice Worden. He was found legally insane and committed to the Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane in Waupun, Wisconsin. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Waupun, Waupun. It took more than a decade before doctors deemed him fit to stand trial. And in November 1968, Gein finally faced a judge, not a jury, by his own choice. The evidence was overwhelming. He was found guilty of murdering Bernice Worden, but immediately declared not guilty by reason of insanity. And he was committed to Mendota Mental Health Institute, where he would remain for the rest of his life. Now, for a lot of people, that is not considered justice, right?
Yeah.
But it really begs the question, how do we serve justice to somebody who is criminally insane, legally insane?
So I have a question. I don't know if you know the answer. I'm trying to ask it without giving away anything if someone hasn't watched the show yet.
Well,
Did the things that they portrayed on the show while he was at the mental institution really happen? Or were those exaggerated? Do you know what I mean? Or we can talk about it later.
So here's what's unsettling. Once he was institutionalized, Ed Gein became ordinary again. He was ordinary. He had a schedule that he lived by. He was quiet. He was polite. He was liked by staff, incredibly liked by staff. He read the Bible. He helped clean the ward. He spent hours in the crafting room. A little weird, but they let him do it. He helped with other residents who were a little sicker than he was or who acted out. He helped. Yeah. He was a helper. He made baskets and leather goods, which for obvious reasons kept the staff had to keep a very close eye on him. Well,
that's what I was kind of asking, because in the show,
he did all. Mm-hmm.
If he was really crafting the things they showed.
Yeah, he was. He just lived this normal life. He rarely spoke about his crimes, but when he did speak to the doctors, they just couldn't get out of him. They couldn't break him that his mother hurt him.
That's so sad in a way too.
Yeah. He still was like, I was going to bring her back. I was bringing her. This is why I did what I did. His break with reality was so complete, in that regard. When he did talk about his crimes, he showed no anger, no guilt, just a kind of detached curiosity.
Oh.
I'm like, well, I don't really know why I did that. I don't know.
He didn't understand why he did what he did?
I don't think that he saw it as necessarily as bad as everyone else did. So I think that there was maybe that's
he
why
didn't understand why everyone else was upset.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. So maybe that's why he didn't talk about it. In one interview, when asked how he felt about being locked away, Gein said, "I'm happy here. I'm treated well." And I mean, that's great.
It gave him that structure, I guess, right?
Yes. It's some people just need it. He seemed genuinely at peace, as though the institution gave him what the world never could: control, order, boundaries. And he stayed there for the next 26 years.
Oh, wow. Damn.
Now, he might have gotten more years in that institution than he would have gotten in prison. Right? Like, I don't know what the sentencing guidelines were back then, but he might have gotten more years. And so, like, but I think people wanted a sense of like justice. It's like, what is justice for people, right? So Ed Gein eventually did die of lung cancer on July 26, 1984.
Oh.
At the age of 77. He was buried next to his mother in Plainfield Cemetery, the same grave where he had once dug up the bodies of others, graveyard, where he once dug up the bodies of others. His gravestone, like I said, was so repeatedly vandalized over the years. People chipped off pieces to take home. And in 2000, it was just stolen entirely. The police did later find it in Seattle, but today his grave is unmarked. Someone found it in Seattle. Crazy. So when you look at Ed Gein's crimes, it's easy to see why Hollywood couldn't resist. His story became the blueprint for three of the most famous horror villains in history: Norman Bates and Psycho, which came out in 1960. So right on the heels of...
Wow. That was not very long.
No. And in the way that they told that story, very inspired by his obsession with his mother. Leatherface came out in 1974 in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So that was inspired by his use of human skin and body parts. And then, of course, Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs, inspired by his woman suit. Each of those characters represents a different facet of what Gein embodied: repression, madness, and transformation.
Yeah.
And it's like those are three very big parts of this whole story and what people talk about all the time. But unlike those fictional killers, Ed Gein wasn't charming. He wasn't brilliant. He wasn't diabolical like his mother. You know, like he was lonely. He was broken.
Yeah.
He was a man who couldn't let go of his mother, who turned that grief into a grotesque imitation of love. And according to Dr. Harold Schechter, one of the foremost authors on Ed Gein, he was the most harmless looking man you could imagine. The kind who'd fix your fence or babysit your kids. And yet inside him was this nightmarish world of fantasy and necrophilia.
Ugh.
So well written. Psychologists have long debated whether Gein fits the profile of a serial killer. Technically, he only killed 2 people. But his compulsion to exhume and mutilate corpses blurs the line between murder and madness, and what is considered respectful of humans. I mean, you may not have killed them, but you desecrated their grave. Yeah. And that for some is just as bad. And he wasn't, but what makes him so different is that he wasn't killing for pleasure or for power, for dominance, right? Right. He was killing to rebuild a world that had died with his mother. Yeah. He was grasping, and he was so lonely. He was in that place with nobody that cared about him anymore. And that really can break somebody. Right. In many ways, Ed Gein is a case study in disassociation, the collapse of reality when trauma and isolation mix unchecked. And that is a whole other topic. And the fascination with Ed Gein says as much about us as it does about him. America in the 1950s was this button-up, suburban, wholesome, at least on the surface. And Gein's crimes shattered that illusion. Yeah. The idea that evil could live next door, that it could wear a kind smile and help you shovel the snow was almost unthinkable. This man babysat their kids. He forced people to confront something terrifying, that horror doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it grows quietly behind closed doors, fed by loneliness and obsession. And much of what we know about Ed Gein has been sensationalized. Some of the more grotesque details, like the skin lampshade, may have been exaggerated by early reporters, but enough was true to leave very little room for comfort. The skull bowls, the masks, the corset made from a torso, the 9 vulvas in a shoebox, those were real. And so was the grief that fueled them. And Bernice Worden and Mary Hogan and all of those women that were dug up out of those graveyards should be honored and should be remembered for the women that they were. But what he did to them is not right, and that's what makes him a monster. And if you drive through Plainfield today, you won't find any signs, you won't find any markers. The site where Ed Gein's farmhouse once stood is an empty field, and locals prefer it that way. But the case still lingers in criminology textbooks and horror films, in podcasts, in cultural imagination. It's become a shorthand for human depravity, but also for the fragility of the mind when it's pushed beyond its limits. And every so often, a new generation discovers Ed Gein, and there will be so many new people discovering who Ed Gein was because of this Netflix and because of our podcast or whatever. And they're all going to ask the same question. How could someone do that?
Yeah.
And maybe that's the real reason his story endures. Because as much as we want to understand monsters, we also want to believe that we're nothing like them.
Yeah. Oh.
When I read about Ed Gein, what strikes me isn't the gore. It's the quiet. He didn't stalk his victims in the night. He didn't leave cryptic messages for police. He went to the hardware store. He babysat children.
Yeah.
He was invisible until the day he wasn't. And that is the most unsettling truth. Evil doesn't always look evil. Sometimes it looks like your neighbor smiling through the screen door.
Oh my God.
And that's my story. That is the end of my story because I don't want to talk about body parts anymore. That makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Not living body parts. I'll talk about body parts next time.
Yeah.
But not living body parts. This will be living. Blech. Blech. So yeah. Aren't you glad? Aren't you glad? You need more whiskey?
No, I need less whiskey. I gotta drive. Can't even finish this whiskey.
All right. So you're bringing us something different next time?
Yep, it's not gonna be disappearance.
Okay. She says that all the time.
I know, but I really don't think it's gonna be.
Okay. It's gonna be the old we'll try there. We'll college try to not have that. Today was a short episode. You're welcome. But we will see you next week. I hope you're all getting ready for the holidays. Remember, this is not a happy time for everybody, and we understand that. So we're here. We have resources if you need them to be safe, to have a good holiday season. You're not alone. You're not alone. We're here. So until next time, please be kind. And if you see something,
say something.
Please. And we'll see you next week. Okay. Bye.